All right, well, according to my watch, it's just about time to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here, and we will continue to invite folks to join us as we go along. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get going. Well, good afternoon. My name is Larry, and I do welcome you to OnLab and today's session where we will examine exploits and advanced attacks. Now, we're going to be looking at some actual cases of attacks, and our engineer will be taking you through some demonstrations that will help explain how exploit-based threats work. Wikipedia defines exploit as using something to one's advantage. For example, in the movies, a superhero might exploit their superpower to do good. Or perhaps some of you have played arcade fighting games like Street Fighter. I love that one. In this game, if you want to throw your opponent, you've got to move close, right? And then when your opponent gets back up, you're allowed to lift them and throw them again. But what if you could throw an opponent who's far away or who's already been thrown down? Well, that's actually possible to exploit the game in this way. Let's have a look. Oh, yeah. So you see the fighter is able to repeatedly throw his opponent without waiting for him to get back up. This is what we call an exploit. Now, to exploit this game, you just have to wait until your opponent comes into your half of the screen. Then you push your joystick back, move it back and forth quickly, and press the strong kick and strong punch buttons at the same time. So, in this example, how can the game developer detect this exploitation? There's two ways. The first is signature-based and detects a series of controls, in other words, exploitation commands. The second is behavior-based, and it detects the controls that are used to throw an opponent who is far away or on the floor. Of course, once detected, the game developer could then modify the exploited flaw and distribute a new version of the game. But enough about Street Fighter. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Sean. Sean is a senior security researcher at OnLab, and he will show you a demonstration of how an exploit-based threat works. Now, due to the limitations of this briefing session, we're not able to perform a live demonstration, so Sean will be using a series of pre-recorded video clips. I think you understand. So please welcome Sean, everybody. There you go.
Hello, my name is Sean. I'm senior security researcher at OnLab. Now, I will show you the first demonstration. Unfortunately, this is not about Street Fighter, but it is an exploitation that infects your system using a crafted PDF file. Suppose that you received a compressed document file from email. Because the file is very curious, you will decompress the file with some password and open it. But for this demonstration, we will check Windows account first. Well, this window has 5 accounts here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Now, let us open the file. Nothing happens. You think there is something wrong with the file, or the PDF reader version doesn't support the file. But if we check Windows accounts again, you can find out a new account broken is there. Even it is added to administrator group. Now I will hand it over to Reddy.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Now, that demo showed an exploit of an Adobe product vulnerability in order to launch a stack-based overflow attack. Let's take a closer look. An attacker can exploit this vulnerability to embed a malicious TIFF image in the PDF document. This is what the TIFF file looks like. If you change the value, the attack shown in the demo will occur. The attack vector is the data count field. When the value of this field is larger than 2, which as you can see is now at 204, the buffer overflow occurs. If you want to use static detection, this exploit can be detected when the value of the specific field is larger than 2. How then is this vulnerability exploited in actual attacks? This sample is from an attack on a financial company that occurred last year. The attacker encoded the malicious script in particular strings to avoid detection. At that time, the senior security researcher at OnLab had to analyze the codes for several hours to find the malicious script. Cyber criminals are using bypass methods to avoid detection of known vulnerabilities. Now, let's take a look at another example. This vulnerability was reported in 2014 and affected Word and other Microsoft products. The bottom image is the RTF file which exploited this vulnerability. The heap buffer overflow occurs when this value is greater than 16, which as you can see is now 25. When n is 25, the vulnerability will be exploited. As you can see, there are many zeros in the middle to make it hard to detect. There's also cases where attackers use a swear word with an asterisk in front of it to make it hard to detect. It's distracting. Now let's look at the scenario of advanced targeted attack that exploits a zero-day vulnerability. Let's assume a hacker is targeting company X for financial gain. The hacker will first install the same antivirus software on his or her computer as the one that's used by company X in order to look for and exploit mechanisms that the AV software cannot detect. The hacker will then start writing the shell codes that will perform malicious activity, such as stealing information or locking and destroying the target system. Once the hacker creates the shell codes, he or she will check whether the AV software, which has behavior signatures, can detect the shell codes. If detected, the hacker modifies the logic of the detected field and repeats the test to create a malware that will bypass the AV software. Finally, the hacker packages this malware very nicely, sends it via email to one or more employees. Then it's just a matter of time before the entire company gets infected. By the way, this is not a virtual scenario. This actually happened. So what can we do to defeat cyber attacks? Well, fundamentally, there's three methods. First, install a reputable antivirus software on your computer that always keep that up to date. Second, always keep the security of your operating system up to date. And third, keep all applications updated to the latest version. These methods could prevent hacking, but you're not entirely safe from APT attacks. So let's take a look at another demonstration. Sean?
Thank you. Let us assume that the PC user is an administrator who deals with very sensitive customer data. The administrator is always very cautious, so he does the following before opening a new document file. First, he checks Windows security is the latest version. This is okay. And second, checks if the PDF reader version is updated to latest version. This is okay as well. And third, checks if the antivirus program is the latest version. Excellent. Next, uses the antivirus program, scans the file, whether this file is safe. Well, this file is okay too. However, even after antivirus scan, the administrator still suspicious of the file, so he uploads the file to VirusTotal. The VirusTotal scans the file with multiple antivirus programs. It takes some time. Now it's done. According to the result, 57 antivirus programs says that this file is safe. Now the administrator is completely trust the file and open it. But the cursor places on this place, all the customer's data was stolen. Reddy will tell you more the details.
Thank you, sir. Got that. Thank you, Sean. All right, so as you've just seen, even if you are a user who takes all the security precautions, your system can still be penetrated by the attacker. That's how sophisticated and deadly the latest APTs are. Now let's examine how we diagnose the zero-day exploits. So this is a series of flow from the vulnerability being exploited to the malicious behavior. There's a bomb somewhere. You don't know when it will explode. Nothing's happened yet, but it's a potential threat. So at some point, the bomb could get ignited. This is when the vulnerability gets exploited and the application starts operating abnormally. Because of this abnormal operation, the EIP of the process moves to the malicious shell codes. Then, boom, the bomb explodes, and the malicious shell codes are executed, and the malicious behavior will then be activated. So let's assume a behavior-based engine detects this process and catches behavior A, modified behavior B, another one behavior we'll call C. It may not be easy, but if it can detect all of the malicious behaviors out there, it can be said to have achieved a complete detection of zero-day exploits. But the problem is, the more behaviors that it catches, the more false positives there will be. It's not easy to apply the many behaviors in behavior-based engines. What's more, hackers are endlessly testing behaviors that bypass detection. This is why we need to find a way to detect shell codes before the malicious behaviors occur. Before we talk about shell code detection, we need to understand how the shell code executes and triggers malicious behavior. When you open a normal file, the EIP accesses the memory like this. However, when you open a malicious file in which the hacker has planted a malicious shell code, EIP seems as if it's accessing the memory as normal, and then as soon as the exploit starts, the EIP jumps to the abnormal memory area where the shell codes exist to trigger the malicious behavior. In order to detect shell codes before malicious behaviors occur, OnLab developed the advanced memory-based analysis technique called Dynamic Intelligent Content Analysis and employs it in our APT solution OnLab MDS. The Dynamic Intelligent Content Analysis, or DICA engine, analyzes assembly codes in the memory of unknown files. It thereby detects the malicious file at the exploitation stage where vulnerable applications are exploited, and even detects malware that exploits new zero-day vulnerabilities. Therefore, regardless of whether the malicious behavior occurs or not, OnLab's exclusive DICA engine detects malware at the pre-exploitation and exploitation phases. Let's take a look at the shell code execution process again with OnLab MDS. Now, as soon as they occur, the DICA engine accurately detects exploits and EIP jump to abnormal memory area. It also creates a report like this when it detects an exploit. This shows where the exploit occurred and the memory and OP code of where the malicious shell codes will be executed. Let's examine this more closely with this demonstration. Sean?
Let me put a malicious document file into the folder for analyze. And then run the DICA engine. As soon as the file opened, the DICA engine diagnoses this file as malicious and closes the file. Let's take a look at the report the DICA engine has just created. The report says that this file is malicious and the name of the vulnerability is CVE 2009-0927. And let's look at the details. The details in yellow show that it uses a heap spray. And it started with the malicious JavaScript, and the JavaScript evoked this vulnerability, and this vulnerability exploits the system to write a specific NLP value on the memory. Because the memory also overwritten to SEH memory, so the application crash occurs and the EIP address jumps to this address. This address runs NLP codes for a long time. Eventually, shellcode appears. Right before the shellcode gets executed, the DICA engine terminates the application and decrypts it as assembly code. Now I will hand it to radio again.
All right, hold on 1 second here. 1 second, please. Going to make sure we're in the right spot here. One second, please. Let me just make sure we're at the right. Okay, so as I talked about before, we really need to make sure we know how that EIP jump works. I showed you that before. It seems like it's accessing the memory as normal, but as soon as the exploit starts, it jumps to the abnormal area where the shellcodes exist to trigger the malicious behavior. Now, in order to detect shellcodes before malicious behaviors occur, that's when we use our advanced technique called dynamic intelligent content analysis, and as I said, employs it in our OnLab MDS. This dynamic content intelligent analysis analyzes assembly codes in the memory of unknown files and detects those malicious files at the exploitation stage where they're exploited. So it also works with zero-day vulnerabilities as well, as I told you before. Now, as Sean just showed you, actually, let me just move on here for a second. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right, so let's take a look at the limitations of behavior-based solutions, and then we're going to compare what OnLab MDS can do with its DICA engine. So there's three types of potentially malicious samples in behavior-based solutions that cannot be detected. Exploits that occur when downloading specific files via network communication, exploits that occur through specific user interactions, and malicious behaviors that occur with a specific environment only. So let's look at our first case here. Here is where we have another sample in which the malware downloads the file via the network, which is a trigger to exploit the vulnerability. In this case, when a specific vulnerability is exploited, this sample file downloads the test.mp4 file from a certain URL. Then the designated malicious behavior occurs. Currently, this URL no longer exists, so this sample cannot download the file and create that behavior. However, if this malicious file remains on your system, it's a threat, and you will need to detect it and get rid of it to prevent any potential damages. Now, in this second case, the exploit occurs only when the victim performs a specific action. So nothing's going to happen if you just open this PDF, but if you move to page 2, it will. Usually document files, they're many pages long, so even with an automated method in VM, it's time-consuming. It's very difficult to check every single page to see whether it's malicious or not. Now, in the third case, the exploit occurs only in a specific environment. On the left, we see the assembly code. If you look inside this square here, there's an OP code. The hacker uses this code to perform malicious behavior through an ROP technique, but this only exists in Windows 7. In other Windows versions, such as Windows XP, there's another OP code in this area, so the malicious behavior cannot be activated. Unlike other APT solutions based on behavior analysis only, OnLab MDS with its DICA engine can accurately detect these three types of malware. So now let's see how that works in our final demonstration. So I'm going to turn it over one last time to Sean. Here you go.
Now I show that how DICA engine detects those three cases that Larry mentioned. In the first case, a sample that download and execute malware from a specific URL. In this case, the DICA engine scans the memory regularly, so it takes just a few more seconds. As you can see, the DICA engine already detects this file as malicious. But it keeps the scanning for give you additional information about the malware. Please be more patient. Oh, now it's done. Let's see the report. The report says that this file is malicious and it uses a hip spray quite a lot, and it tried to attempted to download this test.m4 file. In the second case, a sample that a malicious activity launched only when victim moves to second page. DICA engine detects this file like this. The application still remained on the first page. Let's check the report. The report says that this file is malicious and it uses hip spray and it has a malicious JavaScript. In the last case, a sample that a malicious activity only for Windows 7. Because it is running on Windows XP, so there is nothing happened. But DICA engine detects this file as malicious like this. The report says that this file is malicious and its vulnerability is name of CVE 2014-1761. And the vulnerable module is here, and the memory is also here. This is my end of my demonstration. Thank you.
So APT attacks are very sophisticated these days. These attacks do not simply connect this malware or that malware. They encrypt, taint, and pack malware. These advanced and complex attacks may not occur as often as traditional ones, but they are lethal threats. However, no matter how strong or sophisticated a malware's armor may be, with DICA engine, OnLab MDS detects and analyzes the malware at the assembly level, and thereby stripping off that armor and exposing the threat. This is what separates OnLab MDS from other behavior-based APT solutions. If you'd like to know more about dynamic intelligent content analysis and OnLab MDS, please stop by the OnLab booth. That's number 3315. It's in the North Hall, straight over that way. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and we really appreciate it. Come see us over at the OnLab booth. Thank you.